Good afternoon. It's Wednesday, the 3rd of July, 2019, just after 1 o'clock. Welcome to UK Column News. Your host today, Mike Robinson, myself, Brian Gerrish.
I'll just say apologies for the technical problems on Monday. It's good to be back. Now, we're going to get started off straight away with the European Commission because, the various new incumbents have been selected and all that's left now is for the European Parliament to rubber stamp what's been done. And it starts off, of course, with Ursula von der Leyen, who will be replacing Mr. Juncker. She has been Defence Secretary of Germany in the most recent period. So they've agreed on the future leadership of the European institutions, including Ms. von der Leyen here. She was a compromise candidate, apparently, because they couldn't agree on anybody else. She was born in Brussels, of course. That's how you become German Defence Secretary. And she lived there until she was 13. And then from 2005 until 2009, she became Family Minister in Germany. In 2009, she went to Health and became the Minister there. And then in 2013, she moved to the Minister of Defence, where she began her work to build the European Defence Union, which we have covered extensively on this programme. So European Parliament has to confirm her nomination, but that's, although there is some backlash from them, that's probably just a formality. Now, she is then gets the chance to elect some deputies, and it's going to be another 2 women. So the mainstream press, Brian, extremely excited about the fact that this is going to be the first female president of the European Commission, and she's going to have a couple of female deputies as well. So everybody's getting very excited about that. And also selected is Christine Lagarde as president of the European Central Bank. So that's fantastic news as well, isn't it?
Wasn't there some allegations of fraud or something?
Well, she still has some charges to answer, as far as I know, yes. She, of course, replaces Mario Draghi, and she'll take her post on the 1st of November. So that's that. Donald Tusk was very excited. First and foremost, we have chosen 2 women and 2 men for the 4 key positions, a perfect gender balance. I'm really happy about it. After all, Europe is a woman. I think that it was worth waiting for such an outcome.
There's a number of things I might challenge in that statement. A perfect balance, but this isn't proper gender equality, is it? Men and women.
No.
This is not what's being taught in schools at the moment.
No, indeed, that's absolutely right.
So the European Union is out of sync with gender equality.
Apparently.
Yeah.
Yes. Let's move on then. We've got Josep Borrell Fonteles, who's currently the Spanish foreign minister, and he of course is replacing Federica Mogherini. He's a member of the Spanish Socialist Workers' Party. He became Spanish Foreign Affairs, European Union and Cooperation Minister in June 2018. He had previously worked within the EU as the President of the European Parliament from 2004 to 2007. I think he's the perfect man for the job, Brian, because last year he was fined €30,000 for insider trading after selling shares in a company just before it was announced that the company was on the verge of bankruptcy. So perfect man for the job, I would have thought.
Well, he could team up with Christine Lagarde.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And that's a pretty dodgy
relationship.
Yes, thank you. So next we've got Charles Michel, who replaces Donald Tusk as President of the European Council, and he takes that role, I think, in December. So he replaces Donald Tusk. He, of course, Prime Minister of Belgium up until now, and he was in a bit of problems because of the Global Compact for Migration. If you remember, we talked about that before Christmas, and in December, basically the Belgian government collapsed as a result of his support for it and some other coalition members' lack of support for it. So another perfect person to be the President of the European Council.
Indeed. And it's important we continue to focus on these people, Mike, because, of course, we are not out of the European Union. There is no Brexit. there is no chance of Brexit because, as we're going to see, yet more moving in the military field, EU Defence Union. So I know that there are people who are saying, well, what's actually happening in UK at the moment? What's important at the moment is that people understand that this country is no longer governing itself because the European Union system is in control, and what's more, it's taking more control as we enter the next phase, which is EU Defence Union.
Okay, let's move to the Black Sea now, and good news because NATO is in the Black Sea at the moment, protecting us all from those nasty Russians. They have gone back there following exercise Sea Shield 2019, which took place in April, but there's a whole bunch of ships back in the Black Sea. HMS Duncan and also a Canadian frigate, HMCS Toronto, are there, along with 30 other ships, 30 different types of aircraft operating. And this is apparently because NATO still says that Russia is causing problems for them, and they've got to practice and how to deal with that sort of thing. On Friday this week, Jens Stoltenberg is going to chair a meeting of the NATO-Russia Council in Brussels. This is what they describe as continued political dialogue, but of course it's all about really the INF Treaty. This is the Intermediate Nuclear Treaty, because the NATO claims that Russia's latest missiles breached that treaty, and they're demanding that Russia verifiably destroy those missiles. So that's going on with NATO this week.
Right, okay, well it continues. Let's do a bit more, because this is Cornwall Live reporting on HMS Albion task group exercising off the coast of Denmark. And if we give you a bit of that article, always encourage you to go to the source articles to see what is said in full. We've obviously taken excerpts, but here it is. Russia has been closely monitoring the Royal Navy's ongoing mission to protect the Baltic and Barents Sea. And two of the commanders involved say the UK is ready to respond if needed. As part of Operation Baltic Protector, the UK-led Joint Expeditionary Force, a maritime task group, has seen as many as 4,000 troops, including 1,100 Royal Marines and 44 ships from 7 countries, conduct war games in the region in recent weeks. So we got these forces put together from 7 different countries. It's always a mix. Is it NATO? Is it the European Union? But this is moving into its third and final phase. And Lithuania linking up with land forces in the Eastern Baltic, and Estonia, NATO's enhanced forward presence. Well, remember that, because there's more to come on what NATO is up to. Conducting a series of shore landings and raids. And of course, these exercises are very, very provocative to the Russians because of the proximity to Russia. But it's this sort of statement that goes with it that I find worrying. So this is James Parkin, the Commodore of the Amphibious Task Group. He says, we're equipped, fueled and armed to go on any operation. We don't need to stop anywhere en route. I've got a full fat warfighting capability. So we can get 1,100 troops to sea, and according to this man, we're now full fat warfighting capability. We haven't got the F-35s online yet. Are these people living their own reality, Mike? My opinion is increasingly as the rhetoric against Russia goes up. But let's see where we're really heading, because another excellent headline from Cornwall Live here, Royal Navy and German Navy signed twinning deal. And of course, what a wonderful headline that is, because of course the twinning of towns across Europe was one of the insidious ways that the European Union tried to ingratiate itself in communities. So we use the same expression here. But the Royal Navy and the German Navy are going to get closer in their training operation around the Britannia Royal Navy College in Devon. And these two gentlemen have just signed an agreement. This is the commanding officer of Britannia Royal Navy College. He says, we've enjoyed an excellent relationship with the German Naval Academy for a number of years. Cadets from Germany visit us on an annual basis to take part in training on Dartmoor and in the college grounds alongside our cadets. And I've put this in brackets because it's in the article, but it's not clear whether this gentleman said it. I believe he did. He apparently went on to say the agreement builds on the long and successful relationship between the two colleges. It records an intent to further develop the cooperation and exchange program between the Royal Navy and the German Navy. So there's always been exchange programs with a number of different countries, Holland, Germany, France. This has gone on for a great many years, but now it's all being put into on paper. It's being formalized, it's being enhanced, as apparently we are leaving the European Union. Well, of course we're not. So this is more backdoor EU defence union, the creation of one single unified military force. And
well, look, the one thing that I just want to mention on this, we've got to say, is remember the 8 pillars of European Defence Union as they described it. The left-hand pillar is these bilateral agreements. This European Union says European Defence Union cannot happen without every pillar being in place.
Every pillar.
Every pillar.
Yeah. So on this goes in the background, and of course we look at politics at the moment. Almost Brexit has disappeared into the dust. What's really happening is the EU military machine is being built. And we can come on to this one, Germany and the Netherlands to digitally integrate their armed forces. An interesting article here from defenceaerospace.com. So to improve cooperation in the field, Germany and the Netherlands are going to digitally integrate their armed forces. Never before have the armed forces of two different countries decided to bundle their digital forces as far as they do now. This is a fairly loose translation by Defence Aerospace, so some of it's a little bit, the language is a little bit strange. Both defence ministers today sealed an agreement for the new German-Dutch tactical edge networking. And this is apparently going to allow troops on the battlefield to be fully integrated in everything they do. This is more EU Defence Union. And where does it take us? Well, we'll switch subjects slightly here. Thank you very much to the person who pushed this one through. This is Defence News. Top US Navy engineer says the fleet needs to get out and bust the rust. Now, this might seem a small thing to many people, but actually what's being talked about here is critical stuff. American warships traditionally really, really high standard of maintenance, and consequently those ships lasted for a great many years. Aircraft carriers, not uncommon to be well over 30 years, even up to the 35-year point. And what we've now got is warnings that the Americans can't maintain the fleet and they're rusting. So this is Vice Admiral Thomas Moore. Corrosion is one of the big things if we want to keep the ships around for 40 to 45 years. We have to do what is necessary on the corrosion side of things. That's stop the rust. I don't have the exact numbers, but we're spending 10 billion on our ship depot maintenance, and I'm guessing that several billion of that is corrosion related. So what we've got here now is signs that the Americans are not able to look after the fleet they've got. This was quite an interesting comment in the article by a anonymous, effectively retired US commander. He said, likewise, no coastal nation will be impressed with an ally or a competitor who huffs and puffs about the power of its navy, and then it shows up off the coast looking like a discarded 58 Buick with a tree growing out of the wheel well. So pretty harsh words there. Now, why have we put this particular article up on the screen? Well, contrast it with this, where we've suddenly got a flurry of little articles in the UK press that the former aircraft carrier HMS Hermes, which was passed across to the Indian Navy, is now finally reached the end of its life and it's going to be scrapped. So we've got the British destroyer HMS Defender in the foreground, an Indian Navy ship Virat in the background. And what they're pointing out was that HMS Hermes actually came into the Royal Navy in 1959. So that ship has lasted, Mike, all the way through, in fact, to 2017 for the Indian Navy. So the British taxpayers' money simply given away for peanuts to the Indian Navy, who look after the ship, and it goes on to 2017.
So is this because basically not the avionics, but the electronics on board can't be upgraded to the standard that the British Navy think? I mean, is the Queen Elizabeth so far ahead of this that it was worth spending those billions on that?
Well,
on that
Queen
ship?
Elizabeth's so much bigger than this, Mike. This is a small aircraft carrier. Originally took 58 Harriers, but why was this ship got rid of? In my opinion, they got rid of the ship not because of the state of the ship. This was the early move towards EU Defence Union, cutting the fleet. But here is the point, that this material given away effectively to other nations, it could be Chile, it could be the Indians, taxpayers' money given away, and yet the Indians showing that effectively that ship had years more life in it. So there was HMS Hermes given away, so we lost that operational ship. In comes Queen Elizabeth. This is their Twitter page, and what a brilliant picture, because there's a massive deck but no aircraft. And what I found very interesting in this is this was one of the tweets. It says, Tuesdays with Flag Officer C training means one thing, air defence exercise. We will be evaluated in how we fight the enemy using the F-35 to intercept an incoming air threat. Today, with the UK F-35s on real-world ops, we will use Hawks as our assets. Now, to me, this is indicating that they still have not got fully functioning aircraft on board the carrier, because those aircraft, it would appear, have been taken elsewhere for the operations overseas, and that's going to lead into Syria in a minute. So we've given away assets with years worth of life in them. We've brought in these monstrous ships, but we still can't equip them with aircraft. This is absolutely crass. But if you follow the line through on the F-35s, you can actually come to the Lockheed F-35 Twitter page. And I found this one of the interesting graphics, where we can now see that the real agenda is that Europe is to be swamped with F-35s. So this is nations' aircraft industries wiped out effectively. And I'm sorry to use this little comparison, but I thought this fitted: one Lockheed ring to rule them all, one ring to find them, one ring to bring them all, and in the darkness bind them. So everybody that's sold in or bought into that Lockheed program not only has not got the aircraft at the moment, and many say it doesn't work, but what you can see is one huge unified military force for Europe.
Well, let's move on to Syria then. Start off with Dmitry Peskov here, because he has reported yesterday that there's going to be a summit with Turkey and other countries on Syria. This is because of what's going on in Idlib at the moment. The operation to clear Idlib of terrorists and extremists is in full swing, but there's problems with it. So at the G20 summit in Osaka, President Putin discussed the possibility of a summit with President Erdogan. Maria Zakharova had something to say about this earlier. Force actions that grossly violate the sovereignty of Syria not only do not contribute to the normalization of the situation in this country, but also carry a threat of regional destabilization. And this is because while all this is going on, while the Syrian government, with the support of the Russians, are running the campaign in Idlib province, Syria is increasingly coming under attack from Israel. And the F-35s were involved in this. British F-35s were involved in this because they were operating together. So the Russians are pretty unimpressed. They've called this summit to try to deal with this problem. There has been some fallout from it, as was reported a few days ago by the Daily Telegraph and others. Syrian anti-aircraft missile lands in Cyprus as Israeli strikes kill civilians near Damascus. Now, Vanessa Bailey is in Syria at the moment. She was in Damascus when that Israeli airstrike hit. It was quite close. It was a number of people did die. A number of civilians died, and Israel is just getting away with this. So the summit with Turkey is an attempt to try to get some traction on this situation. In the meantime, as I say, the Idlib campaign continues, and it's not an easy campaign for the Syrian army because the militants in Idlib seem to be being well supplied. Now, I can't imagine where they're getting their supplies from, other than it being Britain and the United States. But anyway, we don't deal with terrorists apparently. Nonetheless, one of the things that the extremists are doing in Idlib is that they're gathering around. Turkey, of course, has a presence across the border in Idlib now, and everywhere that Turkey goes, the Al-Nusra Front goes as well. And basically then we get headlines like this from the Daily Mail: attacks on Turkish observation post in Syria's Idlib kills soldier. And of course the attack was not on the observation post. The attack was on Al-Nusra Front and similar groups who had gathered beside the observation post. This is their MO. This is why we hear all the headlines about the bombing of hospitals and schools, because the hospitals and schools, field hospitals mainly, are being occupied by Al-Nusra Front. They're running their campaigns from there, and that's why they become targets. So this kind of headline is what we see, and that's why this summit has been called, and we wait to see what comes out of that. In the meantime, in Libya, an airstrike hit a migrant detention center in Libya, killing at least 40 people. This is in fact a group attached to the Libyan government, a Libyan general who's launched this offensive in Tripoli. Although the government has tried to keep control of him, he seems to be going ahead and bombing places really without any kind of government approval. But nonetheless, he has the planes, and he appears to have carried out the attack. Well, Jeremy Hunt had this to say. Jeremy Hunt, of course, possibly going to become our next Prime Minister. He said, appalled by reports of airstrike on migrant centre near Tripoli, indiscriminate use of air power in civilian areas is unacceptable. I call on all parties to halt the current fighting and ensure safety of civilians, including migrants. Well, anybody that goes and has a look at Jeremy Hunt's Twitter feed and looks at some of the responses, many of the responses to this, he has got some questions to answer with respect to his absolute silence on Saudi Arabia and their indiscriminate use of air power in civilian areas in Yemen. So Jeremy Hunt, another hypocrite of the highest order, I think.
Well, of course, you know, he was a man who remained silent when evidence started to come out what really happened in the Mid-Staffs Hospital inquiry and all that around. So this is an unusual behaviour by him. But what sheer hypocrisy that we've got UK actively involved in airstrikes again, boasting that it can use its latest toy, the F-35, and of course anybody else who's moving in the region, well, this is outrageous and has got to be stopped. Where's it headed towards? Well, let's come back to the Americans. This is military.com. Air Forces Europe General, time to rethink the way troops train with US allies. So although this has come out of an Air Force perspective, it's really interesting what's being said here. So this is General Basham. He cited a concept championed by Air Force Chief of Staff General David Goldfein. How can we build up the architecture inside Europe and Africa so that we have the network capability, the data links that are required to do command and control at all levels? And how do you do that on a day-to-day basis? We should not build an architecture just for an exercise. We should build an architecture and have a roadmap for that architecture, which allows us to operate on a day-to-day basis with our sister services as well as with the ally and partner nations. So we've just seen the Germans and the Dutch integrating their systems in order to work together. But note that what that American is saying is that the military operations are not just going to be in Europe. Of course, that's against the alleged Russian threat. We're now mentioning Africa again. So Tony Blair's talking about Africa, the European Union's talking about Africa, and the idea is that there's going to be a military system spread across Europe and Africa. This is an empire being built in front of our eyes.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Okay, a quick reminder, if you like what UK Column is doing and you'd like to support us, then please head over to ukcolumn.org/community and join us there. And also AV10 DVD still available. Now, those have now, the pre-orders have now shipped. And in fact, Ian has now extended the special offer on those until the end of this month. So if you, a few minutes after the program, I'll adjust the details on the UK Column shop, and that £10 what's the word? The £10 off will go back on. So that's that. And a quick reminder that on Sunday, the 27th of October, beginning at 10 a.m., AV 10.1, Brian will be speaking. Graham Downing, David Dubine, possibly David Ellis, a couple of others. So it's going to be a great event. That's at the Holiday Inn in Wrights Lane, Kensington. And details at alternativeview.co.uk.
And we have to say a lot of tickets have already gone.
Yes.
So if you're interested, you need to get in on that event.
Well, good news. The Foreign Office, now anybody that was watching closely on Friday's programme would have seen that I put a tweet up from the Foreign Office, and in the background, their header image for that is this: journalism is not a crime. So that's really good stuff. They pushed this little video out today telling us that the killing of journalists and media workers is wrong. They go on to say that you can't kill the truth. Everyone deserves access to information. Well, that's unless the information is about the Foreign Office, because then they won't give it to you. It then goes on to say it's vital to hold governments to account. They say that a free press supports a free society. And they say that freedom of expression underpins all human rights. So this is fantastic stuff, which is why the government, as we've mentioned many times now, is working so hard to shut down freedom of expression, shut down a free press, and shut down anyone that's holding government to account. So I'm just going to say thank you to everyone that took part in the public consultation on the online harms white paper. That consultation is now closed, and we look forward to seeing whatever legislation comes out on that later in the year. But one thing that's clear is that anybody that wants to promote a counter-narrative to that of the British government is going to be shut down.
Is going to be shut down. So it's the Soviet. We are watching the Soviet arrive now. It's quite remarkable how quickly this is coming in. Foreign and Commonwealth Office didn't want to answer any questions about what BBC Media Action has been doing in Eastern Europe, who they've been working with, why we've got a charity taking money from the US State Department. None of that is going to be released into the public domain, but we're going to push out video clips saying how transparent the British government is.
Well, I mean, they basically, they just by default refuse all my freedom of information requests at this point. Even when the Information Commissioner tries to help to get the information out of them, they won't give it. So maybe it's the questions I ask, I don't know. Okay, a little bit of an update on the Battle of Mearns Academy. If you haven't seen this article on the UK Column website, or David Scott's reports on a couple of the recent UK Column news programmes, then please do go and have a look at it. This is all about a young lad called Murray who recorded a discussion with a teacher about the issue of gender, about the issue of gender, and he was, of course, given a 1-week suspension for insisting that there are only 2 genders. Then 2 additional weeks of a suspension were added. We understand that Murray has now been expelled, or rather, he's been told that he will no longer be provided with compulsory education past his 16th birthday.
Yeah.
Now,
so if you ask the wrong question in school, and the Scottish government gets so upset, you're actually banned, but they, of course, don't describe it in those words.
No,
expelled, yeah.
So we are still waiting for a formal statement from the Scottish authorities about this. It wasn't received in time for the programme today, but we've actually got quite a bit more on this, and we're going to be covering it again on Friday with David Scott. So hopefully we will have the official statement by that point, and we will tell you what they say.
And we say this is one of the most significant articles that we've really covered, because everything is in it that you cannot speak your own mind in school because the Scottish Government is going to close down on you. You cannot challenge the new gender agenda because the government's going to clamp down on you. We couldn't have a better advert for where things are going. Indeed.
Now, back in 2013, if you remember, Serco and G4S were in a bit of trouble for effectively fraudulent claims for money from the British government. They were both running contracts for electronic tagging of prisoners on parole. This was the type of article that was coming out at the time from Donahue solicitors here. Should Serco and G4S continue electronic tagging? And they say, I read on the BBC website today, this was in 2013, that Chris Hyman, the chief executive of Serco, has resigned. This follows yesterday's resignation of G4S's chief executive Richard Morris. Both companies provide security and other services such as electronic tagging to the UK government. The use of electronic tagging has doubled between 2005 and 2011. Well, if you remember at the time, G4S was overcharging on this by claiming that they were managing tags for people who had actually died. So they couldn't possibly be managing those tags. They were overcharging basically, and they got caught at it. Well, you'll be glad to know that the Serious Fraud Office has today announced that a deferred prosecution agreement has been reached with Serco and its which is a wholly owned subsidiary of Serco Group. This is Serco Geographics Limited, and this has been approved in principle by Mr. Justice William Davis. On the 4th of July, that's tomorrow, the Serious Fraud Office will apply for final approval of the deferred prosecution agreement before the same judge at Southwark Crown Court. So let's have a look and see what they had to say. SGL engaged in a concerted effort, The resolution not only ensures accountability, but also recognises that SGL's voluntary self-reporting of the misconduct and Serco Group's substantial cooperation with our investigation and Serco Group's extensive corporate reform and other remediation. It also provides substantial assurances regarding the future corporate integrity of Serco Group, really, one of the UK's largest government contractors. And they say that these measures are designed to achieve the goal of fair and transparent dealing with the government and other market participants. Of course, a deferred prosecution agreement means that what Serco does is it guarantees to meet certain undertakings in order that it doesn't get prosecuted by the Serious Fraud Office. So that's good stuff. It should be noted, however, that although they've agreed certain things, including ongoing cooperation with SFO and further strengthening of its group-wide ethics and compliance functions, as well as annual reporting on its group-wide assurance programme, it will also provide that annual report direct to the Cabinet Office. I thought that was quite an interesting thing, because I wasn't quite sure that the Cabinet Office, what role the Cabinet Office was going to be playing in this. But the other thing that the Serious Fraud Office said, Brian, was that, of course, this deferred prosecution agreement with respect to the company doesn't protect individuals, and they're claiming that the investigation into certain individuals is continuing, and there may be further prosecutions later. I won't be holding my breath for that, because I haven't seen much evidence of that type of thing in the past with respect to these DPAs. But they've made that statement anyway.
Well, we'll watch with interest. On the subject of people going to prison, several people highlighted this report to us, concerns Rose West, and essentially the Mirror and Devon Live, and I believe it is elsewhere, reports that jail bosses have ordered inmates to be nice to Rose West. The Cromwell Street serial killer has been moved from top security Low Newton in County Durham to West Yorkshire's New Hall prison. Lags at the Tough Women's Jail have been warned not to bully the new resident. Those who do face losing perks like in-cell tellies or being able to buy treats and toiletries. A source says they've been told that physical and verbal threats will not be tolerated, and could result in a loss of privileges. Now, I was fascinated to read this when I think back to the treatment that Melanie Shaw has had in the prisons that she's been had the misfortune to have stayed in over the last couple of years, where clear bullying of not only Melanie but other prisoners has taken place. And yet suddenly we've got extra special treatment for this particular lady. So we don't understand why this is. We don't understand why that it's being reported quite so widely, but it does appear that this case is still of immense interest to the government, and we'll say at higher echelons of society. We're waiting for more information, and we will let you know what comes out of that in due course. That's it for today. We'll just restate, we are reporting a lot of material to do with the European Union, because it is quite clear that the British government has lied and lied again over Brexit. There is no Brexit, and there can be no Brexit while UK armed forces are hoovered up into EU Defence Union. We understand this morning that some lords are now asking the right questions about what is going on, but meanwhile the wider public are being kept in the dark. And until we realise that we're locked into the European Union, none of the other policy within UK really has an importance, because we're not in control of our own country. We'll leave it there. We'll be back on Friday at the same time. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.